Welcome to the Self-Trust Solution, the podcast for entrepreneurs, leaders, and high achievers who are done second-guessing and ready to execute with clarity. I'm your host, Dawn Leday, the Self-Trust Coach, and each week I'll help you build the one strategy that makes all others work, self-trust. This is where bold goals meet grounded action. Let's dive in. Anxiety used to control my life. Now it's a signal I've learned how to work with, not against. This is a quote directly from our guest today, Dr. Robyn Graham. Welcome back to the Self-Trust Solution podcast. Today's conversation is an invitation to rethink what it means to live and lead with anxiety. I'm joined by Dr. Robyn Graham, a business strategist, podcast host, and author of You, Me, and Anxiety. Robyn's mission is to help Christian leaders and parents eliminate emotional chaos and thrive while navigating anxious thoughts with grace. Together, we talk about how to stop letting anxiety define your decisions, how to use discomfort as data, and why self-trust is the bridge to showing up even when it's hard. You're going to walk away with tools, encouragement, and a whole new level of compassion for yourself. Let's dive in. Welcome, Robyn. We're so glad to have you here today.
Hi, Dawn. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with you.
It is such a pleasure. And you specialize in something that you've really experienced and suffered from, and that's anxiety. And I've heard you say that we don't have to suffer with it. We can actually live with it and thrive. Can you share how that shift in perspective has changed things for you, especially as a parent and leader?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up having anxiety, and there were many ways in which my life was not as optimal, abundant, peaceful, joyful as it could have been. I let anxiety define me in many ways, and that prevented me from living my life. But what I learned as I developed more and more strategies to navigate the anxiety was that it didn't define me. It wasn't my identity, and it didn't control me either. And the more I learned to navigate it, the more I was able to live life to its fullest. So it wasn't controlling my decisions anymore. I was able to say, okay, thanks for being here to protect me, but I don't need you in this situation. I can do this. I can do this on my own. And so the more I was able, and the more even my children or anybody I know has done the work to be able to live with it, sit with it, experience it, but not let it define us and our decisions, the more we're able to thrive in the world that God has placed us in.
So beautiful. Yes. Well, you mentioned letting it define you. If someone's out there listening and they are experiencing anxiety, what does that really look like when you're letting anxiety define you?
So it can be completely debilitating, in all honesty. And I think it's really important to answer that question effectively. We have to go back to see, what does anxiety even look like? And it looks different for every individual. But there are certain physical symptoms of anxiety that someone may experience that they're so dreadful that they aren't able to function in a way that is effective to be able to do something they want to do. So maybe that is they've been called to speak, but they can't speak because it's just physically debilitating. They literally cannot get themselves to even prepare a speech, let alone get on a stage to give the speech, right?
Yeah. So you're separating out, and please correct me if I'm wrong. The difference between like letting it define you could be you are literally letting it keep you from doing things that you want to do versus like there is some physical or nervous system responses that do sometimes do that. Keep moving forward.
Absolutely. But it's also saying, I have anxiety, I can't do that. Or I have anxiety, and that's your excuse, right? So it's layered. If you think of an onion, it really is like layer after layer after layer after layer, and it depends on the individual. For me, anxiety has always manifested in my belly. Like, I feel this very distinct pain in my belly, and it has been that way since I was 6 years old. So, I know that, right? So, I could live with that, and I could be like, "Oh gosh, well, there's that pain. That means I'm doing something I shouldn't do." Or I can choose to acknowledge it and move through it. Now, I can't do that on my own. I need the help of God, honestly. But I also need the tools. I need the tools to regulate my nervous system. And I also don't own that anxiety as that's who I am.
Mm.
It's okay to say, I experience this. I can embrace these feelings, but I can move past them. I can move through them. I can use them to motivate me to take a step forward when I didn't think that was gonna be possible. So it's really when I say that, it's like, yeah, don't let it be your identity.
Mm. Yeah,
Use
you're
it as
separating it from being it's something you experience, not something you are. I love that so much. Now, you do mention these kind of regulation tools or these strategies. What are some everyday habit or system regulation tools that help maintain peace and purpose, maybe even on hard days?
yeah. Um, I would say consistency is gonna be key, as with everything, right? It is taking action. There are many days, you feel like, "Oh, I just don't wanna do that today, and I'm not gonna do it." And maybe that's a workout, maybe that's journaling, maybe it's devotions, maybe it's, um, going to the grocery store. There are days we have where we don't want to do something, and so we just don't do it. But with anxiety and any mental health challenge, we need to be consistent in the action we take. We cannot just sit and expect it to go away. So some of those tools, breath work is amazing. Just knowing how to breathe, whether it's, 4 breaths in, hold for 4 counts, and then exhale for 4 counts, or maybe it's the physiological sigh where you 2 breaths in through your nose and then a deeper exhale that's longer. It'll reset the nervous system. Prayer is integral, I think. I think being in scripture and knowing your identity in Christ is so much greater than letting anxiety be a defining factor about who you are and how you're living your life. In addition to that, there's tapping into your creativity. Anytime we can, and it can be as simple as doodling, but when we can fire those neurons in our brain and take us from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system so that our prefrontal cortex can function, we can make better decisions. So tapping into our creativity is key for that. Movement, it doesn't have to be high impact movement, but going for a walk around the block, exploring nature, just moving your body, gardening, doing things that physically reset your nervous system. And it doesn't have to be running 6 miles, it doesn't have to be high impact aerobics, just moving your body and doing it periodically throughout the day. Journaling, a lot of people will say meditating. I prefer journaling because I don't sit still very well, as you can tell. But journaling has been key for me. And it's really anytime I'm feeling anxious about something, I can write out, okay, what is this? What is it that's making me feel this way? And what past experiences have indicated that I should be feeling this way or that I don't need to feel this way? And writing out what the situation really is and what I'm experiencing in my body and getting that out of my brain and onto paper really helps to alleviate the pressure or the symptoms associated with that anxious feeling.
And spiraling of thoughts that I smile because there's so much about what you're talking about that we put into practice in the self-trust lab because it the reason why we focus on goals is because one, it's fun to go after things and reach them and accomplish, but also because it really is a great way to both bring out discomfort and
Mhm.
learn how to deal with it and
Mhm.
work yourself through it. It's both how we recognize gaps in our self-trust and how we start to build it. And what you're mentioning that is so brilliant is we do need to get things out of our head and onto paper, because what happens when they spiral is they go what I call they gather friends and evidence. And if what's spiraling is doubt or confusion, it's just going to build and grow more. And when we get it out on paper, we can look at it objectively and we can stop
Mhm.
that spiral. We can start to look at what's true here, what's maybe not true, what else is possible, what am I maybe giving probability to that perhaps doesn't have as high of a probability as I'm giving. But also in these regulation tools, we do comfort plans. And each of what you've mentioned is so great because it does touch on the four types of comfort plans that we talk about, which is physical, mental, spiritual, and preparatory.
Mhm.
And so it can be so powerful to give yourself in those moments. It sounds like, and you tell me of anxiety, it's uncomfortable and you're not trying to convince yourself that it's not, but you're introducing ways to bring intentional comfort that supports you through the moment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, people will say, "Oh, well, just get over it." That's not possible. Like, it's not this, "Okay, I'm just gonna turn this off." I mean, if you have a chemical imbalance in the brain, if you have there's epigenetics, there's genetics, there's environmental experiences, there's so many things that will influence how our mind is working. And so, just knowing that, it's really important to give yourself the grace to say, "Okay, this is what I'm experiencing. It doesn't mean I'm an awful person or I'm a bad person or that I'm failing. It's recognize, okay, this is part of who I am, and that's okay. But I don't have to stay stuck here. I can actually take the action and move forward." And the one thing, and I like what you just talked about that you do in your lab as well. And I think it made me think, I'm thinking of a lab, multiple people, and connection is so key too. Because again, we're not meant to do life alone. We're not meant to try to survive alone. And so having that connection with other humans just to bring us back to that center of peace and connection is also really key.
Love that. Like I can acknowledge that it's there and I can support myself through it instead of defining myself by it. And and in that, then telling myself what's possible or not possible for me
Mhm.
because of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
good. So self-trust and anxiety, I talk about self-trust obviously all the time because I think it's such a key point. I I can see how sometimes that can feel at odd with anxiety. What would you say to someone who doubts their own capacity because of anxious thoughts or spirals?
Mm. So here's a great exercise. So when you are in a consistent state of what if thoughts, and most of the times those what if thoughts are negative thoughts, right? Like, what if I can't do this? What if they don't like me? What if I mess up? What if I fail? What if I say the wrong thing? What if they don't like my outfit? I mean, the list could go on and on and on. And so we have to catch those, right? We've got to stop that negative thought loop. But when you think about what that can do to your self-trust, if you're staying in this negative thought loop, constantly questioning what could happen versus saying, "You know what? I have the tools that I need. I have everything within me to be able to step forward and do this thing or participate in this thing or be with this person or have this conversation." It it so yes, your answer to answer your question, yes, 100% anxiety can definitely influence the level of self-trust. And I link it with confidence as well. When we're in that negative thought loop constantly and we're not doing the work to break those patterns, emotional or thought, uh, we're going to be stuck and that self-trust is going to be really hard to establish.
Yeah, it erodes our self-trust because we start to believe, we start questioning it, and then we start to believe we don't necessarily have it. But that those question loops, it's so true. Like they go and again grab the friends and evidence if we don't stop them. What we talk about in my book, Master Your Inner Dialogue, is how we can just answer those questions.
Mhm.
Like, it doesn't even we don't have to change them. We don't actually even have to stop them showing up. You can just answer them, and you gave such a great answer there. Like, I have everything I need.
Mhm.
So if one of the questions is, "What if this fails?" You could answer it, and you don't have to lie to yourself. I always say that actually brings more anxiety and distrust when we try and paint rainbows and daisies on top of our doubts and our fears. So we can just answer it with, "You know what? I don't know. I could fail, and I think it's worth it to try."
Mhm.
Or it's possible I'll fail, and it's possible I won't.
Mhm.
Giving some other options to yourself instead of sinking into the spiral of unanswered questions, because those unanswered questions, boy, do they love to go and find
Mhm.
friends, right?
And you can also challenge them too. And I like to use this as an example. If you can catch those negative thoughts or even those negative emotions that are bubbling up and, start questioning like where is this coming from? And does it really apply to today, to where I'm at in my life now? Because maybe back then when it happened originally, I wasn't prepared yet. I didn't have the skills yet. But now I've come this far and I do. But even challenging, like, would someone that knows me and loves me be thinking the same thing about me? Would someone that respects me be questioning this the way I'm questioning this? Or, would someone that I know, love, and trust be considering me as a human the way that I'm considering myself as a human? So I think there's so many ways. Yes, we can answer that question. We can challenge those questions. But to just sit and accept is when we create that stuckness and we don't move forward.
Yes, we have to remember that we don't, one, have to believe everything we think, and we can absolutely engage in conversation with it. I like to think of it as an invitation, actually,
Mhm.
even if it seems like it's the meanest thought ever. It can be an invitation to affirm yourself, your path or your goal. It's like it's that little devil's advocate, that little, just like some of us pay to have someone challenge our thoughts. We have that ingrained in us. If you accept it as that, it changes everything. It's no longer trying to become a roadblock. It's trying to remind you to own who you are.
Mhm.
And the other invitation is, if that's not it, or that doesn't seem available to you, it could just be inviting you, like, what's the wisdom here that it might be inviting me to see there's a different path, an easier way, a better way, or a way that takes care of me better.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So good. So you built a business while parenting teens with anxiety. What have
Mhm.
you learned about maybe leadership, grace, and boundaries in that process?
Mm. I think with every leadership role that we have, and as women, we often have many, um, we're going to face challenges. And anytime there are challenges, there can be anxiety, right? But I think where a true leader is going to be able to excel and thrive and survive even sometimes, right? Is to allow that grace that we don't know everything,
Mm.
but what we do have is the ability to learn and to take action and move forward. And so I think the 2 kinda have to go hand in hand, and I think that's where faith kinda comes into play too. It's like, I know I can't do this by myself, but I know everything is possible when I allow God to lead me and guide me, and so I think that and I know I've mentioned faith a few times in this, interview, but it's such a core value for me, and it's how I've been able to be able to lead. And the other thing too is that it's that grace comes into play, Dawn, especially when we make mistakes. Because as a mom and with teens with anxiety, life can be really challenging. And they're going to challenge you in ways that you never expected to be challenged. And so, you're talking about their well-being that's being challenged when we're talking about mental health. And so it's really giving yourself the grace that, okay, you know what? I can lead them and I can guide them and I can give them so much love, But I also have to recognize that I don't have all the answers and I'm gonna mess up. I'm not perfect. And I might get mad at them and I might yell at them. I might scream at them. But I also know that I can give myself the grace to forgive myself for those mistakes, accept those mistakes, learn from those mistakes, apologize, forgive myself, and seek their forgiveness as well. So it all kind of goes hand in hand, but I think the grace has to come above any leadership goals because otherwise we're going to be stuck. We're just not going to be able to face the emotional trials that we're often faced with.
Yeah. I have to share personally that when you said we don't have all the answers, I don't know about you listeners, but I feel this like sigh of relief inside of me. I don't sometimes, and this is a new thing for me because back when, before I started this work 6 years ago, I believed, whether you could get me to admit it or not, that I needed to have all the answers. And when I didn't, I felt shame and I felt embarrassment. And right now, just you said it twice, and I literally could feel myself relax into my chair. And I hope that you are all experiencing that as well. And if you're not, please look inside and see, where am I believing that I'm supposed to have all the answers? And what if I just let that go? I think it's such a beautiful invitation.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the other thing too, Dawn, that kind of ties into that is that it is very important for us as women in leadership as well as parents that we connect with ourselves first. We need to understand ourselves. And I can tell you that the more I learned about myself and how to navigate my own emotions and trust myself, the better mom I became. The more patient I was, the more kind and loving I was, the more I was able to help them navigate their situations without having to control the situations, right? There's a big difference, guiding, leading versus controlling. And that's not our job. They have to make decisions, right? They have to make mistakes or they're not going to learn. But the key is for us to connect with ourselves first, then we can guide them.
100%. And that is what we are doing here for sure. Definitely in the self trust solution. It makes a huge difference. It changes perspective. It opens you up to so much more grace and different ways to move forward that aren't defined by you. Takes the heaviness out of it
Yeah.
and the obligation out of it and starts to introduce more like gratitude
Yeah.
and openness.
And you said shame as well. You mentioned shame before, and I think that's an important thing too when it comes to connecting with us ourselves and identifying that we don't have to have all the answers and we don't have to do it all right. And it is completely okay if we mess up because we're not made to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
So when we accept that, we're gonna be able to give more grace to others and more grace to ourselves.
Yeah, it's through those shoulds that we create that shame for ourselves. It really triggered something in me because shame is a big piece of when you don't have trust, you are going to spiral in those moments of, I should know this. And then it just starts showing you more of your deficiencies.
Mhm.
You never get to see all of your positives, all of your strengths that come when you're
Mhm.
so focused in that space of, I should know better, I should know differently. And it also blocks you from learning so much.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm an avid learner. I love everything about learning and teaching and all of that. And I think that's the other thing, right? As leaders, we should always I just said should, but I think it's a it I maybe and should need
We want to.
maybe, but there's a desire to learn. It's not a should, it's not a need. There's a desire. There's an underlying desire in leaders to learn and grow, right? And I think when we have that, we're more apt to want to learn how to connect with ourselves to be able to better lead other people. And at the end of the day, if you're a parent or you're a business owner, you're a leader. It's just that simple. And so we have to learn, right? But
Yeah.
it's that desire in us as leaders, I think, that
Yeah.
takes it to that next level of just superhuman growth and development that occurs every part of our timeline. It's just always part of our journey. And there's always resources, right? There's always a book you can read. There's always a podcast to listen to. There's always a lab to enter to learn more or an academy or something. So I think that's just a great part of being a leader is that
Agreed. And we just had
desire.
2 amazing episodes, on leadership, and I think what I'm noticing that when we have these amazing experts like yourself talking about leadership, it is to lead yourself first. It is to decide who you are and how you wanna show up so that you are doing it from a clean place, not from a place from having all the answers and knowing everything and never being open to learning because that is part of our evolution. Yes, we are wired, a part of us to seek safety, but there's also a part of us that is wired to evolve and expand and grow, and that happens through learning. So, well, speaking of books and lessons and labs and continuing support and learning, you have a book titled You, Me, and Anxiety. So I have to ask, if anxiety was sitting with us right now, what would you want it to hear? And then what would you want our listeners to know?
That's a good question. So if anxiety was sitting here right now, I would say, thank you. You served me well. But now I don't need you to keep me safe. I have got other tools and strategies that I can use, and I'm strong, and I've got this. For the listeners, I would say, and this ties together with what we were talking about with shame and leadership and everything, and it's don't judge. Don't judge yourself. Get curious. So if you're experiencing anxiety, you have a team member, you have a child experiencing anxiety, get curious. What does it mean for you? What does it mean for them? Ask the questions instead of judging that something's wrong with you, something's wrong with them.
I love that. And what if what it means is just sometimes I have anxiety?
Yeah.
What if it's that simple?
Sometimes we have knee pain, right? I mean,
That is so beautiful. It's so true. Instead of making it mean something's wrong with us or that something has gone wrong or something's no longer available to us or we're not going to be able to create something because this anxiety exists, just like we have knee pain sometimes we have anxiety.
mhm.
So awesome. Thank you so much, Robin. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we close for today?
You know, Dawn, I have a ebook that they can download if they're interested in learning more about anxiety, and it's got some tools like what we talked about earlier, as well as some Bible verses and just some great like baseline information on anxiety. So if they want to learn more, they can absolutely download that for free at the robyngraham.com/resources. So
Yes, and we're going to have that in the show notes. And you definitely want to go and check that out. And also, be sure to go check out the Robyn Graham show. It's her podcast, and I'm going to be a guest on it. So go follow that podcast as well. Thank you, Robin.
thank you, Dawn.
What will you take away from this episode? Here are highlights that stood out for me, and I encourage you to write them down and start implementing them if they speak to you. The first is consistency is key. We've heard this a lot from several guests lately. Regulating anxiety doesn't require perfection, but it does require showing up for yourself daily, even in small ways like a breath work, journaling, or going for a walk. Next is you are not your anxiety. Anxiety is something you experience, not who you are. You can acknowledge its presence without letting it define your identity or limit your possibilities. Next is you don't need to have all the answers. Can we get a collective sigh of relief? True leadership begins with self connection, not perfection. Grace and curiosity, not shame, create the space to grow through anxiety and support others with it. Finally, your thoughts aren't the enemy. Your dialogue with them is the opportunity. Even anxious or critical thoughts can be invitations to affirm yourself, your path, or your goal and discover a better way forward. If you've ever felt like anxiety was holding you back, let this episode remind you you don't need to silence it. You just need a new relationship with it. You can find Dr. Robyn's free ebook, Alleviate Anxiety by Developing Healthy Habits for a Healthy Mind, at therobyngraham.com/resources. And don't forget to subscribe to The Robyn Graham Show. I'll be a guest there soon. Until next time, remember, you don't need a new you. You need to trust in the one you already are. Inside every goal is a decision, an action, an evaluation, and an adjustment. Keep building your rhythm with the Self-Trust Solution. Subscribe, leave a review, and explore how we can work together at theselftrustcoach.com. I'll see you in the next episode.